The royal family of Ravania were going to visit the city during their world trip, and, of course, they were all bringing their precious crowns with them. They asked the mayor of the city to take special precautions.
Thank you.
So, he placed the crowns in a safe in a hidden room in his office, guarded by a couple of security officers. However, the next morning, when the mayor came to check on the crowns to report to the royal family that they were safe, he started panicking. Can you guess why? It's because the crowns inside the safe are not the real ones. The first crown has a price tag on it. The second crown is broken, and one of the gemstones on the third crown is missing.
Oh no!
That wouldn't happen if it was the real thing. The mayor wanted to make sure that whoever had stolen the crowns was caught. He also hoped the police would find them before the media learned about what had happened. And the only person who could help him was Detective Zelda. So, he immediately called her. The detective arrived at his office and inspected the secret room. She noticed something that might help her with her investigation. Can you figure out what it is? There's a piece of paper under one of the fake crowns. The thief left a note. Detective Zelda read it. Dear Mayor, I'm very disappointed in you. This accident has proved how inept you are at providing comfort and security for your guests, as well as your citizens. I believe I can be convinced to give the crowns back if you pay me a large, and I mean it, sum of money. Mark my words and count on what I say in my letter on this matter. Here is my contact number. 19.1-1.3-19.4-1.2 and 13.3-1.2-6.3-9.1. Yours truly, the Riddling Man. What can you make of this number? Well, the mayor thought it was a phone number. He immediately took his phone and dialed the number. But, just as Detective Zelda suspected, no one answered. In one of the last sentences of his letter, the Riddling Man underlined mark, words, count, and letter. That must be a hint. The number before the dots indicates which word you should look for in the note, and the number after the dot tells you which letter you need in that word. For example, 19.1 means you need to find the 19th word, which is comfort. The letter you need is the first one, which is C. When you do that for every number, you'll get Cafe West. Before Detective Zelda left for the cafe, she decided to check the security camera footage recorded at night. The mayor took her to the surveillance room. There were 3 different monitors, each showing the room from different angles. Detective Zelda realized only one of them was still recording live. The other 2 were showing fake images. Which recording is real and why? Do you remember what the room looked like when Detective Zelda was inspecting it? The clock certainly wasn't on this wall. It was on the opposite one, so the footage on the first monitor is fake. The footage on the second monitor isn't real also. If you look closer, you'll see a moth flying around the room, but it repeats the same movement over and over again. That's badly edited fake footage, so it makes the footage from the third monitor the real one.
Oh yes.
Detective Zelda rewound the footage and found the moment when the Riddling Man had broken into the room. He was covering his face, so it was impossible to tell what he looked like. Still, Detective Zelda managed to notice something that could help her find the criminal. Can you tell what it is? If you look at the lower left corner, you'll see someone walk into the room and leave it quickly while the Riddling Man is stealing the crowns. Could that mean that the Riddling Man has a partner? To find that out, Detective Zelda questioned all the security guards who had been working the night shift. The first guard, George, said that he'd been keeping watch in front of the door. The only time he left his place was when he took a short bathroom break. The second guard, Joe, said he'd been standing in front of the door to the mayor's office all night, and the only person who took a break was George. The third guard, Brian, said he'd been right there by the door as well. Detective Zelda knew only one of them was telling the truth, and the other two were lying. Who is the liar? Do you remember what the shoes of the man who entered the room looked like? White sneakers, and that's what Brian is wearing. So he's lying. And since Joe didn't mention that Brian had left his place, he's a liar too. George is the only one who's telling the truth.
Ciao.
Brian and Joe immediately started begging Zelda. "We can't end up in jail. We promised we didn't steal anything." "You have to believe us," Detective Zelda asked. "Then why did you lie?" They said that they had heard some noise coming from the room while George was away. They decided that Brian would check the room and Joe would keep watch. When Brian saw someone in the room, he got scared and ran out of there. He told Joe that he would rather lose his job than have something bad happen to him. As for Joe, he lied because Brian was his best friend and he didn't want him to get fired. And since they never saw anyone enter or exit the room, they thought they were imagining things. After all, they were very tired. What do you think Zelda can do to check if the guards are telling the truth? She can check the surveillance footage of the street outside the building to confirm that nobody entered or left. When Zelda couldn't see anyone even walk across the street, she came to the conclusion that Brian and Joe were telling the truth.
Yeah.
The detective decided to check the secret room once again to figure out how the riddling man had gotten inside. Sometime later, she managed to spot another hidden door. Can you see it too? The bookcase is actually a door.
Oh my god.
She examined the door to figure out how to open it. She noticed 3 buttons, but only one could open the door. If Zelda pressed the wrong button, the door would get locked for good, and she would not be able to figure out where it led. Which button should she press? Take a look at the books next to the buttons. One of the titles is meaningless, while the others make sense. That must be an anagram, a word or phrase formed by rearranging the letters of another. When you rearrange the letters in the title, you'll get the second button. Detective Zelda pressed it, and the bookcase door opened. The woman saw a narrow hallway with stairs leading down. She took a step, and the door closed behind her back. She tried to force it open, but it wouldn't move. The only thing she could do was go down the stairs. She ended up in an underground pit. Inside, there was nothing but a shovel and a sign that showed her that she was around the pit. In the hole to the left, there were venomous snakes. The pit on the right was filled with poisonous gas. And on the ground right above her head, there was an angry dog with sharp teeth. What should she do? She should dig upwards. She needs to listen to the sounds the dog makes and wait for the animal to fall asleep. Then she should walk quietly past it. That must be how the riddling man entered and left the room. Detective Zelda didn't want to waste any more time, so she headed to Cafe West. A guy sitting at the table in the corner caught her eye. He looked suspicious. When Detective Zelda started walking towards him, he quickly wrote something on the newspaper he'd been reading. Then he ran away through the back door. Detective Zelda tried to catch him, but failed. She checked the paper and found another note. It said, "You're not the mayor, but I'll give him one last chance. It looks like you work for him, so bring me $20 million in cash. We can meet at the building that has the most stories in 2 hours." What building does the riddling man mean? The library. Of course, Detective Zelda was not going to give him any money. She took an empty bag to trick him into believing she had the cash so that he wouldn't run away. She went to the library. When she entered, she saw the Riddling Man wearing the same sunglasses and coat. He was waiting for her in the riddle and puzzle books section. Then, suddenly, someone accidentally pushed the woman. She dropped her bag. It fell on the floor and opened. The Riddling Man saw it was empty and understood that this was just a plan to catch him. He ran away. But he dropped something while escaping. It was a library book, and there was a library card inside. It had 3 different addresses of 3 different people who had borrowed the book before. Zelda immediately realized which was the Riddling Man's address. How did she figure it out? Remember the note the Riddling Man wrote to her at the cafe? The first address is written by the same person. Detective Zelda had 2 police officers break into the Riddling Man's apartment. They found the crowns, but the criminal was gone. For some reason, Detective Zelda felt that she would see the Riddling Man again. You're the headmaster of a fun sciences school. Today is the final day of the semester. You have to handle all upcoming problems and make sure all the students will pass the difficult exams. All teachers except for the professor of memology are waiting in their classrooms. You walk through the school corridors, greet the students, and go to your office. You have a separate drawer where you put all the keys to all the school doors. You throw the office key there, sit down at the table, and notice that some documents have disappeared. Someone has stolen the answers to a video games test. But how did they get into your office? The door and windows were closed. Take a look at the ventilation gate. It's slightly open. Apparently, one of the students broke in there early in the morning. Your secretary is knocking on the door. You say that you're busy and ask to come later. Then, you sit down at your computer, open YouTube, and watch funny videos. The internet signal disappears. Someone has turned off the electricity at the school. You go to the basement with generators. There, you see a turned-off switch and 3 people standing next to it. They all say they didn't touch anything, but one of them is lying. The janitor says the lights went out when he came here to clean up. Louise is a new student. She says she was lost in the building and accidentally got here. Richard is a last-year graduate. He came here to find a miniature toy horse, a souvenir he hid many years ago. Which one of them is lying? The janitor has a bucket and mop, so he's not lying. You see a horse in the corner of the room, so Richard is telling the truth. Louise is a liar. She said she's new, but it's the end of the semester. She can't be new at this time. You're the headmaster, and you would know in advance if there was a new student at your school. Louise admits she turned off the electricity to disrupt the sleep science exam. You turn the power back on and go to the dining room to have breakfast. You order coffee, sit down at the table, and meet an angry chef. He says that one of the students poured a bag of sugar into a pot of soup. You're looking around the room. Who do you think did this among all these guys? They all have deep plates with soup and spoons, but this guy has a plate with a fork. He wouldn't eat the soup because he knew it tasted disgusting. You finish your coffee and head to the office. You walk through a long corridor and see graffiti on a huge photo of a crazy dog, a mascot of the school. The guard catches 3 students. One of them must have ruined the image. Can you guess who did it? Here's a guy hiding his hands. Indeed, there are traces of paint on them. You're walking through the internet history room where an exam has just started. There's silence in the audience. Students are writing a test, but one of them is cheating. Find them. Look at this girl. A wire stretches from her sleeve to her ear. Someone is giving her the right answers through her headphones, and that guy is looking at the answers written on his leg. Someone activates the alarm. All students run out of the school. You make sure that everyone is outside. You head to the exit and notice there is no flame anywhere. You can't even smell the smoke. Someone turned on the alarm to disrupt the exams. You catch 3 students. One of them is guilty. But who? Alex says he was in the toilet when the panic started. Amanda was taking a meme test. Luke was sleeping in the dining room. Which one of them is lying? Amanda turned on the siren. The memology professor isn't there, remember? So she obviously wasn't taking that test today. You go outside and meet the school gardener. He says that someone has cut the roses in the schoolyard. The gardener saw 3 people who could be suspects. You bring them into the yard and ask about roses. Lewis says he was in the library all day. Mary was taking an exam on internet history. John was training at the gym. Which one of them is lying? Look at Lewis. His sleeves are torn. Roses have thorns. He probably damaged the shirt when he was cutting the flowers off. You pass by the dining room and hear some strange noises. Someone is obviously tired and breathing heavily. You look inside and see 2 guys at the table. They're arm wrestling. One of them looks angry and aggressive. He's shaking his hand and trying his best. The other is calm. Who do you think will win? The guy on the right. He holds onto the edge of the table and doesn't waste his strength on unnecessary movements. He will defeat the angry opponent. You enter the trends room. You heard a lot about this subject and a young teacher who has a unique approach to the science of popularity. She tells you that she has asked all her students to create a new profile in the social network for their pets at the beginning of the semester. Now, all the students must show the number of subscribers and likes. The one who has the most popular profile will get a high score on the exam. Students show photos of their pets: mini pig, hamster, cat, goldfish, chameleon, dog, goose, hamster, raccoon. All the photos are pretty popular, but 2 of them are fake. Which ones? The hamsters. 2 students have identical photos. They must have found those online. You're observing a pseudo-philosophy exam. The teacher gives blank sheets of paper to all students. Then he says, "There's a lot of supposedly philosophical phrases on the internet that seem too pretentious, obvious, and stupid. People love to attribute quotes to famous persons that they never said. So there's a person who can say anything that can be true or false. They can say both good and bad things, and no one in the world can prove that this person didn't say that. The authorship of this person is unquestionable. Who is this person?" After 5 minutes, the students give back their papers. They all have names of famous athletes, scientists, billionaires, and entrepreneurs on them. No one has passed the exam except for one girl. She wrote just one word. Which one? Anonymous. You walk around the school and hear someone screaming. Several students are running away from the biology classroom. They say a poisonous snake has escaped from the terrarium, and now it's crawling in the room. It's too dangerous to have lessons here. You call the rescuers, but to catch the snake, you need to find it. Look around carefully and find the reptile. Take a look at the picture with snakes in the far corner of the room. One of these snakes is real, as its tail goes beyond the painting. Your next problem is in the parking lot. The professor of magic tells you that someone has punctured a tire on her car. Apparently, one of the students took revenge on the teacher for a bad grade on the exam. Fortunately, there's an extra tire in the trunk. But here's the problem. You don't have 4 bolts to attach it. How can you help the teacher? Unscrew 1 bolt from the other 3 wheels and attach them to the new one. Each of the 3 wheels has 3 bolts now. That's enough to get to the nearest car service. You come to your office to take a nap, but hear a sudden cracking noise. You find pieces of glass in the yard. Someone has broken a window on the 3rd floor with a stone. You need to figure out who did this among 3 suspects: a cook, a gardener, and a student. The cook says he was in the kitchen making burgers. The gardener claims that he was watering the roses in the garden. The student says he was sitting in the library at the time. Which one of them is lying? The gardener. One of the students has cut those roses, remember? So the gardener didn't have any roses to water. Finally, the day is coming to an end. All students have passed their exams and are going home. You walk through a long corridor and hear a knock. Several people are stuck in the gym and can't get out. They've lost their keys, and the door only opens from the outside. You need to help them, but where can you find the keys? You have the drawer in your office with the keys to all the school doors, remember? You unlock the gym. Then, you finally sit in your office and watch YouTube. You have solved all the problems. You deserve a good rest now.